Do you know what it feels like to see a child testify against the man who murdered her mother and realize that man shares your blood? Logan Whitaker whispered those words to himself, his jaw clenched as he watched Sophie's small figure climb into the witness box. His heartbeat was a pounding drum in his ears, but nothing could drown out the storm raging inside him. Betrayal, rage, guilt, and a growing fear that maybe, just maybe, he'd waited too long to fix everything. He had promised to protect these children, promised to keep them safe. But what do you do when the monster you're trying to stop isn't just hiding in the shadows, but sitting in your own family tree? This wasn't just a courtroom. It was a battlefield where innocence was about to collide with darkness, and where Sophie's truth could either free them all or destroy what little hope they had left. And just when you think you've seen the worst, something happens that no one in that room, especially Logan, could have possibly expected. Stay with me, because what happens next will break you and heal you in the very same breath. Logan Whitaker didn't believe in fate. Numbers, logic, strategy, those were the pillars of his empire. But nothing in his carefully calculated life could have predicted the moment he would stumble upon a little girl crumpled in the snow, clutching two screaming infants to her chest like they were the only things keeping her alive. It began like any other sleepless night at the top of Whitaker Tower in New York City. At 32, Logan was already a legend, a tech magnate who tripled his inheritance in just 5 years. He had it all: wealth, power, control. But the truth was, his nights were silent and his penthouse cold, just like the man who lived in it. Tonight, though, the walls felt even more suffocating than usual. The glare of his laptop blurred into meaningless shapes. Without thinking, he threw on his Italian cashmere coat and took the elevator down to his Aston Martin. He didn't know where he was going. He just drove. Snow fell thick over Manhattan, and the streets were quieter than usual. The city's noise faded into the background as Logan's thoughts wandered about the life he'd built and how little it truly filled him. That was when he found himself near Riverside Park. The place looked like a ghost town under the glow of streetlights. Maybe a walk will help, he muttered, stepping into the icy wind. The cold hit him like knives. Still, he walked deeper into the park, the silence pressing in. Then he heard it. At first, it was just a whisper beneath the wind. Then a cry, faint, muffled. Instinct took over. He followed the sound, heart-pounding footsteps crunching fast over the snow. When he rounded the bend near the old playground, the sight stopped him cold. A small child, no more than 6 years old, lay curled on the ground, barely conscious. Her lips were blue. Her hands were wrapped tightly around two baby's twins, maybe 6 months old, crying from the cold and hunger. And that tiny girl, she was shielding them with her own body. "Dear God," Logan gasped, dropping to his knees. His hands shook as he checked her pulse. Weak but there. Without thinking, he stripped off his coat and wrapped it around all three children. His phone nearly slipped from his frozen fingers as he dialed. "Dr. Peterson, emergency. 3 children, 1 unconscious. My place. Now." Then he called his housekeeper. "Margaret, get 3 rooms ready. Warm, clean clothes, heat on full. I'm bringing kids, 1 girl, 2 infants. Don't ask questions, just move." The drive back to his mansion was a blur of headlights and anxiety. Every few seconds, he looked into the rear view mirror to make sure the children were still breathing. By the time he arrived at the estate, Margaret had the house lit and waiting. She gasped when she saw him carrying the bundled children. "My God, Logan, where did you find them?" "Riverside Park. Alone. In the snow." He carried them upstairs to the Rose Suite, normally reserved for guests, now turned sanctuary. Margaret took the twins with practiced ease. "Go get her checked. I'll handle the babies." Dr. Peterson arrived moments later, sharp and steady as ever. After examining the girl, he looked up grimly. "Mild hypothermia. She had hours, maybe. You saved her life." A strange knot tightened in Logan's chest. He hadn't felt something like this fear mixed with fierce protectiveness in years. Maybe ever. Then the nurse, Mrs. Henderson, said something that made him go still. "Those babies, not a scratch. The girl must have kept them wrapped under her arms. She froze so they wouldn't." "She nearly died for them," Logan whispered. He stayed by her side for hours, watching her face, too pale, too still. At around 3 a.m., she stirred, slowly. Eyes fluttered open, startled green like forest glass. She jerked up. "The babies, they're okay. Logan said quickly, gently holding her back. They're in the next room, safe. Her eyes darted around the luxurious room, confused. Where am I? You're in my home. I found you in the park. I just want to help. She hesitated. Then in a whisper so soft it almost broke him, she said, Sophie. My name's Sophie, he smiled. That's a beautiful name, Sophie. And the babies Emma and Noah, right? Your brother and sister? She nodded, but when Logan asked about her parents, she froze, then gripped his arm with more strength than he expected. Please, she whispered, don't let him take them. Don't let him find us. The fear in her voice wasn't normal. It was primal, bone deep. Logan felt his blood turn cold. Who, Sophie? She looked toward the door like she expected a monster to walk through it. He'll hurt them, like he hurt Mommy. At that moment, Margaret entered with a tray of hot cocoa and stopped cold when she heard Sophie's words. No one spoke. The silence screamed. No one will hurt you here, Logan promised. Sophie cried then. Quiet, broken sobs. Logan sat beside her, holding her trembling hand. Margaret knelt down beside her and wiped her tears gently. You must be starving, she said. Can you try some soup? Sophie's stomach growled so loud it made them all pause. She blushed. I haven't eaten in a long time. Logan clenched his jaw. How long had this little girl been starving, hiding suffering? Margaret returned with soup and bread. Sophie ate slowly, politely, but her eyes never strayed far from the door. As she ate, Logan noticed the bruises on her arms, old yellowed. Her cheeks were sunken. He swallowed hard. After the meal, she asked to see the babies. Logan carried her gently to the nursery. Sophie crept toward the cribs, reached out to touch Emma's cheek, then Noah's hair. Her whole body seemed to relax. They're warm, she whispered. They're okay. Yes, Logan said softly. Because of you. Back in her bed, she gripped his hand again. Promise you won't let him find us. He looked into those terrified green eyes and whispered, I promise. But even as he said it, a storm was beginning to rise inside him. Who was this man she feared so deeply, and what had really happened to Sophie's mother? He didn't know yet. But he would. And when he did, he'd make sure Sophie never had to run again. We're sorry to pause the story at such a critical moment, but tell us, do you think Logan made the right choice bringing those children home that night? Would you have done the same in his place? If this story touched you, please tap like and leave a heart. Your support keeps the story going. Logan Whitaker had faced some of the most ruthless boardroom wars on Wall Street, but nothing prepared him for the weight of a 6-year-old's trembling hand in his. That night, after tucking Sophie into bed, he couldn't sleep. Her terrified eyes, her bruised arms, the way she'd shielded her baby siblings. Like a soldier in war, it haunted him. Something darker was hiding beneath her silence, something that didn't sit right. The next morning, Logan stood by the nursery watching as Sophie gently fed Emma with a bottle, while Noah slept beside her. The calm was fragile, like a painting over shattered glass, and Logan knew if he didn't act fast that peace would break. He called in a favor, one that could get a man disbarred or promoted depending on who was listening. David Collins, he said into his phone. I need you. Quiet work. Deep background. No leaks. David was one of the best private investigators in New York. Discreet, efficient, and morally flexible. Who are we looking into? David asked. A man named Richard Evans. I don't care what it costs. I want everything. As the call ended, Margaret entered the room, her face pale. She held out a child's bracelet. We found this tangled in Sophie's coat. I think you should see it. It was delicate pink with silver beads. One charm stood out, a worn heart engraved with the name Rachel. His fingers froze. Rachel Bennett. The name punched through his chest like a fist. Logan hadn't heard it in years. She had been part of a brief summer memory, a music teacher he met at a charity event years ago. Smart, soft-spoken, and hauntingly kind. He remembered being drawn to her warmth in a way that terrified him. Then she disappeared, just vanished from society. Could it be the same woman Logan walked into the library and pulled out an old charity album from a gala 10 years ago? His heart skipped when he flipped to a group photo, and there she was, Rachel. Young, vibrant, standing with a glowing smile. And standing beside her was a man he didn't recognize. Logan zoomed in. Richard Evans, The same man now hunting Sophie. His jaw clenched. If Rachel was the children's mother, and if she was gone, that meant the man Sophie feared was not just her legal guardian. He was likely the one who had taken her mother from her. The door creaked open. Sophie stood there clutching a crayon drawing. "Can I sit with you?" "Of course," Logan said, hiding the album behind him. She climbed onto the couch and handed him the paper. It was crude but unmistakable, a stick figure man with red eyes standing over a woman who had X's for eyes. Beside them, 3 tiny children stood crying. His throat tightened. "Who's this?" he asked gently. Sophie's voice cracked. "That's Mommy. That's Richard. You saw him hurt her, didn't you?" She nodded, just once, then whispered, "I didn't tell anyone. He said if I did, he'd make us disappear. Like Mommy." Rage erupted in Logan's chest, but he swallowed it. "You're safe now. I promise." Later that afternoon, David Collins returned with files thicker than Logan expected. "Richard Evans," he said, throwing the folder onto the desk. "Gambler. Bankrupt. Bounced around Arizona and Nevada. Last year got into a custody battle with a woman named Rachel Bennett, who filed multiple restraining orders before her sudden death. It was ruled an accident, but..." He pulled out the coroner's report. Cause of death, blunt force trauma from a fall down the stairs. Richard was home at the time. No witnesses. Case closed too fast. Because she was poor, Logan muttered. No one fought for her. David looked uneasy. "Here's the kicker. Turns out Rachel used to work at an elite private school one you fund through your foundation. A few months before she died, she called to ask about your scholarship program. Said she had a connection to the Whitaker family." Logan froze. "You think Sophie is..." "I don't think," David said, pointing to a photo of Rachel holding a newborn. "I know. That's you in the background. Whitaker Tower Gala, 2016, the night after your father's retirement. I dug up photos. Rachel disappeared right after that. It hit Logan like a truck. Rachel, the summer they met, the connection, the retreat weekend his assistant called a blip on your schedule. His memory returned, an evening under the stars, a soft kiss, a goodbye he thought would fade." He leaned back breathless. "She never told me." David nodded. "And now her daughter and twin siblings are in your home, in your care." Logan ran a hand through his hair, then looked at Sophie's drawing again. "I need to protect them. Legally." "That's where it gets tricky," David said. "Evans has temporary guardianship. He could show up and take them back legally. Unless what? Unless you can prove he's dangerous, or you file for emergency custody first. But you'll need a hell of a lawyer." Logan didn't hesitate. "Call Laura Mitchell. Tell her it's war." The next morning, the front gates of Whitaker Estate buzzed. Richard Evans had arrived. Sophie saw the black SUV from her bedroom window and screamed. "He found us," Logan burst in. "Stay with Margaret. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone." He stormed downstairs as Richard approached the steps, flanked by a smug attorney. "You've got something that belongs to me?" Richard sneered. "3 things, actually." Logan didn't blink. "Not anymore." "We'll see what the court says," Richard spat, shoving paperwork into his chest. "You think your money can buy them? You don't even know who they are." Logan stepped forward, voice low and razor sharp. "I know exactly who they are, and I know what you did." Richard's smirk faltered. "You've got no proof." Logan smiled cold. "Not yet, but give me one more day. You won't know what hit you." Richard turned and left, but not before spitting on the pavement. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." As the SUV peeled away, Logan stood frozen on the steps, his fist clenched, heart pounding. Inside that house were 3 lives depending on him, and for the first time in his adult life, he knew exactly what he was fighting for. We're truly sorry to pause the story right here, but let us ask you, if you were in Logan's shoes, would you risk everything, even your legacy, to protect 3 children you barely know? If you feel moved by this story, please tap the heart and hit like. Your support means the world. The morning of the custody hearing arrived with the weight of 1,000 storms. Logan Whitaker stood outside the courthouse in a tailored charcoal suit, but his heart thudded with something far heavier than any business deal he'd ever negotiated. Sophie held tightly to his hand. Her little fingers were ice cold despite the spring air. Behind them, Margaret clutched Emma and Noah in a double stroller, whispering lullabies with trembling lips. Inside the courtroom, tension rippled like invisible smoke. Richard Evans sat smugly across the aisle, flanked by his defense attorney. He wore a clean suit and a fake look of concern, but Logan saw at the mask slipping behind the eyes of a man who had hurt more than he could ever admit. Laura Mitchell, Logan's attorney, stood and spoke with razor precision. "Your Honor, we are filing for immediate revocation of Mr. Evans's guardianship based on new testimony, documented abuse and financial fraud surrounding a minor trust fund intended for the children." The judge glanced over his glasses. "Is the minor willing to speak?" Everyone turned. Sophie stood up. Logan's chest squeezed. He hadn't wanted her to testify. He would have carried the weight for her, shielded her forever. But she had insisted. "They need to hear it from me," she'd said. She stepped to the witness box. Her feet barely touched the floor. When she spoke, the room turned breathless. "My name is Sophie Bennett. That man," she pointed at Richard, "said he was my dad. But he's not. He hurt my mom. He pushed her down the stairs. I saw it. I tried to wake her up, but she never moved again. Then he told me I was imagining it, that I'd go to the bad place if I told." The judge shifted in his chair. Sophie continued, her voice growing steadier. "He told me he'd take my brother and sister away, so I ran. I ran in the snow with no shoes, because even if I froze, they'd be warm." A tear slid down Logan's cheek. "I want to stay with Mr. Logan," Sophie said. "He listens. He doesn't yell. He makes me feel safe." There was a long silence. Then the judge leaned forward. "Thank you, Sophie. You're very brave." The ruling was swift. Custody was granted to Logan Whitaker. A criminal investigation against Richard Evans was formally opened. Richard stood mouth open in disbelief as officers moved to escort him from the courtroom. But just before he disappeared through the doors, Logan did something no one expected. He walked over to Richard, looked him in the eye, and said quietly, "You were given a family and threw it away. I won't do the same. I won't be like you." Richard didn't respond. He was already sinking into the silence of a man who had lost everything. Weeks passed. The estate no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a home. The twins laughed now. Sophie painted bright skies and sunshine instead of storm clouds. Margaret played music in the kitchen. And Logan, he started dreaming again. One quiet Sunday, while Sophie helped bake cookies and the twins babbled on the rug, Logan walked out to the garden where Margaret sat under the wisteria vines. "I thought I knew what my life was supposed to be," he said. "Then 3 children showed up on my doorstep and broke it all apart." Margaret smiled and put it back together. He nodded slowly. "I was a man made of marble, Margaret, but now I bleed. I feel." She took his hand. "That's what family does. It carves you open so love can get in." Later that week, Logan found an envelope in the mail. It was from Rachel Bennett's sister, who had heard of the custody trial through a mutual friend. Inside was a photo. A younger Rachel holding baby Sophie in her arms, smiling at the camera, and standing beside her was Logan. His hand was on Rachel's waist. He had no memory of the photo, but the truth in it made him crumble. He had been there, at the beginning. Somehow, fate had brought it all full circle. The final moment came on a warm evening. Logan brought the children outside to the garden. Fireflies blinked in the tall grass. Sophie twirled barefoot in the twilight. "Mr. Logan," she said, tugging his sleeve, "can I ask something? Anything. Can I call you Dad?" He knelt in front of her, voice barely holding steady. "You can call me whatever makes you feel safe, sweetheart. But if you call me Dad, I'll never let you down." Sophie threw her arms around his neck. And in that moment, Logan Whitaker, billionaire loner businessman, became something entirely new. A father, a man not defined by his wealth or legacy, but by the lives he saved, and the heart he finally let beat freely. Now that you've followed Logan and Sophie's emotional journey, let us ask you, do you believe people can truly change when love enters their lives? And should past pain define who we become or who we choose to protect? So what did you think of this story? If it touched your heart, comment no more 3 below. If you weren't quite satisfied, go with number 1. And if you felt it was just okay, choose number 2. Also, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, tap the heart, and share this story with someone who needs to believe in second chances.